We're going to do Manchin's corruption. That's what we're going to do. Joe Manchin has yet another scandal about corruption out there. He's a pretty well understood corrupt guy. Let me rephrase that. He's pretty well understood to be a massively corrupt guy. All the stuff with his daughter, and price gouging on insulin, and she was forced out, took like a $30 million golden parachute or something to leave the pharmaceutical company in West Virginia that she was previously an executive at, if I have that correct. She was either on the board or an executive, one of the two. Anyway, Manchin, of course, supporting that company with his role in Congress and the industry more broadly. Manchin known to take all sorts of money from fossil fuel companies, from banks, from all of the most nefarious actors in our political process. And he is caught here yet again in another political scandal, this one kind of local to West Virginia. We have a clip here. This is More Perfect Union, you guys. I'm using their work all the time. They're a fantastic source at More Perfect US on Twitter. If you want to follow their work, they dove into some of the details here on Joe Manchin's corruption. So we'll watch this, come back and discuss.
Manchin, the senator, is also a wealthy mining executive, and he sells all his coal to this one power plant here in Granttown, West Virginia. A new investigation reveals that for 30 years, Manchin has been using his public office to benefit that plant, all while getting a cut of the plant's revenue. This arrangement has helped make him a millionaire, in part by forcing people in his own state to pay higher electricity rates. It's a classic story of conflict of interest and public corruption. This is how he did it.
A livable future!
He does not care about our future. He cares about his future as a millionaire and as an oligarch.
You're harming more than West Virginia. You're harming the whole system.
In the 1980s, Joe Manchin owned several gob mines,
which stands for garbage of bituminous.
It is the dirtiest kind of coal you can burn.
It's really a filthy product. It's full of rock, clay, things that should never enter an incinerator.
As the New York Times uncovered, Manchin used his new position as state senator to win an air pollution waiver so the Granttown power plant near his district was allowed to burn gob, which produces high levels of the toxin sulfur dioxide. In private, Manchin then made a deal to sell his gob to Granttown in exchange for a cut of the plant's revenue. Despite the conflict of interest, Manchin then helped pass tax credits to subsidize power plants that burn gob in West Virginia.
It's poisoned our water, it's poisoned our air, it's poisoned our citizens. And Joe's made money off of it.
As governor, Manchin worked behind the scenes to push for electricity rate increases on people who relied on power from Granttown.
He's helped make sure that this plant gets rate increases to pay for electricity that actually isn't made as cheaply as other forms of energy, including wind and solar, which are also able to be made right here in West Virginia.
Ratepayers were forced to spend millions of dollars in excess fees in one of the poorest states in the country, and Manchin personally benefited from all of it.
Making money off things that you are in charge of, totally immoral, unethical, and all kinds of other words.
Since 2016 alone, Granttown has cost West Virginia utility Mon Power $117 million more than it would have to buy power from other sources. Later, when the EPA proposed
the first ever national mercury and air toxic standards for power plants,
Manchin, now a United States senator, sponsored legislation giving regulatory authority over coal ash to states to get around the laws.
We have this agency stepping way beyond its boundaries, further than our founding fathers ever intended.
He looks at himself in the mirror when he's looking for that inside guy, As the senator, he's the one who's getting rich from the coal company, and as the owner of a coal company, he's the one who's getting the breaks from the senator.
Fast forward to today. For 3 decades, Manchin has made millions as the gob supplier to the plant, while simultaneously getting a cut of the Granttown plant's revenue. That plant is the last in West Virginia that still burns gob, and would be put out of business by the new climate legislation proposed in President Biden's Build Back Better plan. To squeeze out the last profits before a possible closure, the plant's owners tried to force the utility company to buy out its contract, which lasts till 2036. By November, it was clear that the state regulators who would have had to approve that buyout were skeptical. And a month later, Manchin announced that he was opposed to the Build Back Better bill altogether, effectively killing it.
And I cannot vote to continue with this piece of legislation. I just can't.
He doesn't care. He doesn't care what anybody thinks. He doesn't care what his constituents think. He doesn't care what environmentalists think. All he cares about is making more money for himself and his crony friends.
The things that happen at this coal plant and across our state only make our water dirtier, our soil dirtier, our air dirtier, and I don't want to have to tell my grandkids or even my kids or even myself in a few years that I can't live here because it's not safe.
Somebody hurting us far too long. And we won't be silent.
So hardly surprising to find Joe Manchin, sticking his hands in the piggy jar again. This one's a pretty brazen one, right? He legislates in ways that help an industry, and then he sort of monopolizes that industry. And of course, it's like the dirtiest kind of coal that you can burn as well. So it's like it's a layered thing here, right? He's also destroying the environment while he's getting rich. Unreal. And from some of the clips I see in West Virginia, I'm often confused. Like, how does this dude how does he get fucking elected? How does he get elected? I mean, am I seeing such a small portion of what people actually think in West Virginia of Joe Manchin? I mean, they're a right-wing state, so the fact that he's a Democrat is odd. Like, that they keep electing a Democrat is odd. But then all the rhetoric I ever see actually coming from West Virginia is very pro-working class and very anti-corruption and, very like pro-labor and pro-worker. So it's just, I don't know if he's just effectively spinning himself as the lesser evil to enough people to keep getting elected or what, but it just seems to totally run counter. And not that this is unique to West Virginia. I mean, I recognize that, we're as I covered last week, we're often voting between a giant douche and a turd sandwich when it comes to these congressional elections. But it's just fascinating to me that of all states, like a state that West Virginia might have the claim to be the state that has been most railroaded by neoliberalism. And they're certainly right there, right? They're in those few handful of states or whatever that kind of could lay claim to, like, we've had it worse over the last half century or so. And yet they keep voting for, like, Joe Manchin is the epitome of neoliberalism, the absolute epitome of it, the epitome of corruption. They keep voting for it. The epitome of nepotism. Look at what happened with his daughter. They keep voting for it. Really outrageous stuff here. And I don't mean to, by the way, just to be really, really clear, that's just me being confused. I don't mean to like blame the voters here. If you don't vote in West Virginia, I don't blame you for not voting. You going to vote for that shithead, or are you going to vote for a Republican? I mean, like, what are you going to do, right? Giant douche turd sandwich. So I'm not trying to sit here and voter blame. I'm fascinated by the dynamic in West Virginia in particular, because of all states, it should be, patently obvious there that Joe Manchin's politics are harmful to the vast majority of people, although they are quite beneficial to him, as we're finding out here. Great coverage from More Perfect Union at More Perfect US on Twitter. If you want to learn more about the labor movement and keep up on strikes and things there, we have a labor update as usual coming up a little bit later that is also got a great deal of More Perfect Union coverage. So